All right, good morning or good evening, everyone, wherever you are. We will wait just a few seconds to let more people log in before we get started. So let's give everyone about 30 seconds to log in. All right, more people will be joining us as we go, but I'm very mindful that though we have 90 minutes, there's so much to discuss today. So I'll get started with the introduction. Thank you everyone for joining us today at the Stimson Center for the third webinar in our series on Japan's new national security strategy. I'm Pam Kennedy, a researcher in the East Asia program, and I'm filling in very briefly this morning for Yuki Tatsumi, the co-director of the East Asia program and director of the Japan program. So she'll be logging in to join us shortly. Today, our topic of discussion is Japan's national security strategy in the context of its allies and partners. So we're going to have two panels of 45 minutes each to dig into some of Japan's key security relationships. This first panel will focus on Japan's partners in the Indo-Pacific, and the second panel will look at Japan's partnerships with Australia and European countries. Our panelists today also each wrote a commentary on some aspect of the national security strategy, which you can find at a link that we'll be posting in the chat. So everyone today will be discussing their perspectives from those commentaries in more detail and having some further discussion. For our first panel, we are joined by Masahiro Kurita, Senior Fellow at the National Institute for Defense Studies in Japan, Dr. Kei Koga, Associate Professor at the Public Policy and Global Affairs Program at Nanyang University in Singapore, and Dr. Ken Jimbo, Professor of the Faculty of Policy Management at Keio University. Thank you so much for joining me today. To get started, let's turn to Kurita-san first. You wrote about Japan's relationship with India. What makes this partnership so important for Japan?
Okay, thank you, Pamela-san. So can I speak maybe 10 minutes or so about my commentary? Okay. Yeah, so thank you everyone for joining. I'm Masahiro Kurita. I'm a senior fellow of the Japanese National Institute for Defense Studies. And I'm working on South Asian security issues, but unfortunately, I'm not working on India, but I'm mainly focusing on Pakistan. So actually, I'm a little bit uneasy about talking Japan-India relationship today. But anyway, today I would like to talk about Japan-India security partnership. So as you may know, so over the last 2 decades, Japan-India security partnership has gradually and steadily developed. As both Japan and India face increasingly assertive China, so there have been ample reasons for these two countries to deepen security cooperation. But of course, because of geographical distance and insufficient power projection capabilities of both countries, as well as Japan's pacifist security policy and India's strategic autonomy, so there is no chance for this relationship to be elevated into a kind of formal alliance-like relationship with a collective defense commitment. But I think even below that level, a wide range of meaningful cooperation can be possible and has actually been pursued. And the latest Japanese NSS and NDS suggest that as long as two countries face a challenge from China, such a trend is likely to continue into the future. So this partnership will be expanded into the future. And now such a trajectory is becoming much more clearer, as shown by the statement coming from Prime Minister Kishida's latest visit to India. So before talking about the partnership under the latest NSS, let me review the record of the Japan-India relationship before this latest NSS. Actually, the previous versions of the Japanese NSS, 2013 version, already express the intention to strengthen bilateral relations with India in a broad range of areas, including maritime security. But in 2013, Japan-India security partnership was still in its early stage. It was after both Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi came into office that this cooperation gained significant momentum. It was after 2014. And since then, Tokyo's security partnership with Delhi has seen steady development. Several landmark pacts have been signed, such as 2015 agreements concerning transfer of defense equipment and technology, and 2021 AXA, and 2022 memorandum of cooperation in the field of cybersecurity. And in 2015, also the Japan-India Vision 2025 was launched, which expressed the two capitals' commitment to promote a peaceful, open, and rule-based Indo-Pacific, and intention to promote, quality infrastructure in this Indo-Pacific region. And also in 2019, the 2+2 ministerial dialogue was established. And also the two capitals have been cooperating within the revived Quad framework since 2017. And in terms of military-to-military ties, the annual bilateral naval exercise began in 2012, and JMSDF became a permanent participant of the US-Indian Malabar naval exercise in 2015. And the annual bilateral exercise between the two armies, Japan-India, focusing on counterterrorism, started in 2018. And meanwhile, Japan has not only continued to engage in kind of high-profile economic development initiatives in India, such as high-speed railway, but also Japan has emerged as a trusted partner for Delhi to develop India's sensitive Northeast, which is crucial to inter-regional and also inter-regional connectivity. And then, so against this backdrop, Japan launched the latest version of NSS last year. And it mentions Japan's security cooperation with India, actually in two contexts. The first is as a part of the effort to develop a multi-layered network among allies and like-minded countries. And second, deepening of the Quad cooperation. At the same time, the 2022 NDS expresses Japan's intention to deepen bilateral and multilateral defense exchanges with India in a broad range of fields, such as maritime security, cybersecurity, defense equipment and technology cooperation, and etc. So I think what these strategic guidance documents suggest is twofold. First, Japan's security cooperation with India will continue to deepen further. And second, although its future is promising, there is nothing to suggest a significant departure from the trajectory that this partnership has followed to date. So I mean, the likely course for the Japan-India partnership under the new Japanese NSS is an evolution of what has been done or discussed between Tokyo and Delhi to date. So let me mention some prospective areas for further cooperation. Regarding defense equipment and technology cooperation, not only exports of kind of complete hardware, but also cooperation in technology development is pretty much promising. Japan and India have actually already identified projects in several dual-use technology for further cooperation, such as UAV, underwater communication, robotics, intelligence systems, etc. And regarding joint exercises, so with the first Japan-India joint air drill held in January this year, now all three services of Japan-India militaries have a regular joint exercise. So next, maybe it may be worth considering expanding this exercise in the future to include kind of a more joint element or other partners like US or Australia. And Japan-India partnership in infrastructure development in India's neighborhood is, I think, also promising, because South Asia is now increasingly becoming an arena of China-India competition. And as you may know, the Prime Minister Kishida's FOIP vision, which was launched during his latest visit to India, clearly suggests Japan is intending to enhance its role in this respect. And also, India is now emerging as a crucial partner in the field of economic security, especially for the development of secure supply chains, both bilaterally and through Quad. And I think, of course, maybe Tokyo and Delhi can find other areas for cooperation beyond these items. So before concluding, next, let me briefly touch on implications of imbroglio over the Ukraine war. As in other Western democracies, India's reluctance to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine caused consternation in Japan. Especially, there is refusal to allow Japan's military aircraft carrying aid for Ukraine to land in India was particularly disappointing for Japanese policy community. Actually, some questioned India's credential as a like-minded partner. But after the initial controversy died down, it has turned out that, of course, India's policy toward Russia is a little bit irritating for us, but it is not a serious hurdle for Japan-India partnership. After all, as long as the two capitals' main and imminent security concerns overlap, China, we have to manage China. So there is no reason for these two countries to abandon this partnership on other grounds. But meanwhile, I think this experience suggests an important lesson for Tokyo on how to manage the domestic perception on this partnership with India. Actually, this relationship has been touted as a one based on kind of, common value. But it is undeniable that India's policy stance contradicts Western and Japanese understanding of liberal democratic values on multiple fronts, like its policy on Russia or its policy on human rights. So in my opinion, advertising this partnership as one based on common values will occasionally create unnecessary disappointment in future. And I think it should be described in a more kind of straightforward manner. This is a partnership based on a shared geopolitical concern rather than shared values or something like that. So finally, in sums, I think Japan's security cooperation with India is likely to steadily deepen under the new NSS, as long as China remains both countries' security concern. There's many ample reasons for these two countries to expand cooperation further. And meanwhile, there are no signs that Tokyo, much less Delhi, is intending to kind of qualitatively upgrade this partnership into a formal alliance. So in short, I think what awaits the Japan-India security partnership under the latest NSS is kind of progress without drama. I stop here. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Kurita-san. Sorry, folks, that I ran late. For those of you who are meeting me for the first time over the Zoom, my name is Yuki Tatsumi. I'm a co-director of East Asia Studies and director of Japan program at Paired Stimson. And like my colleague Pam said, we are very delighted to have Dr. Koga and Dr. Kurita and Dr. Satake and Dr. Jimbo for this morning's webinar. Unfortunately, Dr. Iwama has been sick for the last few days, so she will not be able to join us. But I'm pretty sure that four of our panelists will make this session all more interesting. So thank you again for Kurita-san. Sorry that I missed that part of remarks. So next, I think I would like to turn to Dr. Koga for his thoughts on the Southeast Asia and Japan.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tatsumi-san, for your kind of introduction and having me here on this webinar. So my focus is on the Southeast Asia. And in this quick presentation, I'd like to discuss my commentary, which I published this January. And I would also like to touch on the how Japan considers Southeast Asia after Kishida administration issued the Japan's new plan for the free and open in the Pacific, FOIP, on the March 20th. So in my commentary, I discuss how Japan situates Southeast Asia in its new national security strategy. The reason I chose the national security strategy, among other two security related documents, namely the National Defense Strategy and Defense Build-Up Program, was that it was supposed to be the comprehensive and overviewing the Japan's strategic perspectives in the international arena. And generally speaking, I believe that this strategic document was well-crafted and has become a very important one in many ways, particularly indicating Japan's willingness to show more effort to increase its defense capabilities, including the counter-strike capability in the context of the more challenging the security environment. But when it comes to the Southeast Asia, the 2022 National Security Strategy is relatively underperformed, in my opinion. And this is what I argued in my commentary, and there are three reasons for that. The first one is the Southeast Asia or ASEAN was not mentioned except for two sentences in the National Security Strategy. One indicates that Japan will pursue international coordination and cooperation with maritime law enforcement agencies in the United States and Southeast Asian countries. And then the other sentence is that Japan will enhance security cooperation with the ASEAN countries, along with the other partners such as the Australia, India, European countries. So they are basically general statements, and then there is no specifics about Japan's expectations toward the Southeast Asian countries or ASEAN. So this indicates that the Southeast Asian region is not necessarily the priority of Japan in the national security strategy. And second, Japan's geostrategic priority in the Pacific region is clearly Northeast Asia now. As the section, the security environment and challenges in the Pacific region in this NSS National Security Strategy shows Japan's focuses are on China, North Korea, and Russia. And China as the unprecedented and the greatest strategic challenge, North Korea on its nuclear and missile development and human rights violation, and then Russia on its violation of international law, the state sovereignty of the Ukraine because of the aggression toward the Ukraine. So this is completely understandable. And then in Northeast Asia is a primary focus for the Japan's national security strategy. So the Southeast Asia, to some extent, were put in the back burner. And third, the Japan's national security strategy focuses more on the balance of power politics rather than the maintaining or enhancing the existing international order or rules-based order with the Southeast Asian states or ASEAN. Although Japan has long emphasized the importance of the ASEAN and Southeast Asia for regional order building in East Asia and in the Pacific, there was no discussion on this point in the document. So it was not entirely clear how Japan can incorporate Southeast Asia into its strategic vision or security vision. But at the same time, this document was published in December 2022. And then in June 2022, when the Prime Minister Kishida visited Singapore and made a speech at the Shangri-La Dialogue, he promised to launch the free and open Indo-Pacific plan for peace in the spring 2023. So I ended my commentary saying that hopefully this new plan of the Japan's FOIP will clarify how Japan incorporates Southeast Asia and ASEAN into its strategic vision. And on March 20th, the new plan came out, which discussed Japan's vision that emphasized the cooperative aspect of the international relations in the Indo-Pacific region, and which resonates with the ASEAN's vision of the Indo-Pacific. So this is a good thing, but again, like for the Southeast Asia, this new plan is kind of like mixed bag. Here, I would like to highlight again, like the 3 points. The first one is the positive side. The positive side is Japan clarified its position to seriously consider how to make international rules and norms with the countries in the so-called the global South, including Southeast Asia. The international rules-based order is the frequently used term by the advanced democracies, but those in the global South always question whose rule and the norms they are. And in this context, the Prime Minister Kishida mentioned, quote, the approach we should take going forward is the rule-making through dialogue that respects the historical and cultural diversity of each country and equal partnership among the nations, end quote. And this shows that Japan's willingness to work with the Southeast Asia and ASEAN for the new rulemaking, along with the other countries in the global South. And second, another positive side is that the Kishida administration clarifies the Southeast Asia as one of the 3 most important regions in the Pacific, multi-layered connectivity. And this basically aims to facilitate economic growth by strengthening the regional soft and hard economic infrastructure and connectivity among them. So this is the more kind of continuity that Japan has been engaging, but this is also Japan making sure that they are going to make this point clear. And then thirdly, this is somewhat the negative side. I'm not really sure how it is actually explained now and in the future. But then this new plan does not reiterate the importance of the ASEAN centrality in the Pacific. Although it mentioned about Japan's willingness to synthesize free and open in the Pacific with the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific in terms of connectivity or other functional cooperation. But I believe previously, like every document that Japan published, then Japan always emphasized the importance of the ASEAN centrality and unity. But then this new plan doesn't really touch on that. So I'm not sure if there's any kind of the negative implication. But then I would actually say this might actually change some of the focus that Japan is pursuing in the Pacific. So what can I say about this Japan's security and strategic posture toward Southeast Asia? I think that Japan's strategic emphasis is now gradually shifting to focus more on the balance of power in the Northeast Asia, and also in the restructuring of the regional security architecture that are shaped by the new unilateral and the multilateral frameworks, such as the Quad, AUKUS, and the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for the prosperity. And this may be kind of the provocative and to say, but I would say maybe it's the Southeast Asia importance in the relative term. It may be actually declining in the Japan's security or strategic thinking. But then I'll stop here and then I look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Koga-san. I was actually going to ask you what you thought of the Prime Minister Kishida's Indo-Pacific strategy. So thank you for incorporating that in your opening comments. My original plan was to go to Dr. Jimbo after this, but since Dr. Iwama is not able to join us for her illness, and there are 4 panelists, so I think what I would like to do is change the order of the business up a little bit, and next go to Dr. Satake, and get his thoughts on the place that Australia has in the Japan's national security strategy, and asked Dr. Jimbo to wrap it up, basically touch on all these aspects from a U.S.-Japan alliance standpoint. So with that, Satake-san.
Yes, thank you very much, Tatsumi-san. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tomiki Satake. I'm a senior research fellow of Japan's National Institute for Defense Studies. But actually, from today, which means in 1.5 hours in Japan, I'm going to be an associate professor at the School of International Politics, Economics, and Communication at the Aoyama Gakuin University. So this is going to be literally the last job for me, in NITS. But anyway, thank you very much for inviting me to this very valuable opportunity workshop. And I think, when I read Japan's new national security strategy, I was a little bit surprised because there are actually fewer mentions about Japan's regional partnerships, including that with Australia. Now, I counted the number of countries mentioned in the NSS, and the previous one, which was published in 2013, had Australia 3 times, but this time only once. And India, 4 times in the previous document, but again, only once in the new NSS mentioned. And ASEAN was even, worse. It was mentioned 10 times, including the ASEAN-led security architecture, like ARF or ADM Plus. But this time again, ASEAN was only mentioned once. That, is to some extent natural because this document is pretty much focused on Japan's homeland defense, more than Japan's, regional engagement. And of course, the regional engagement remains very important, but, when the Japan threat perception became more and more focused on what is called the traditional high-end conflicts from the gray zone or peacetime situations, especially in the regions such as Taiwan or Korean Peninsula and so on, it's actually inevitable to focus on Japan's homeland defense rather than regional engagement. So how to prepare for actual contingency, even without the support of the US military, I think that's a fundamentally important, the essence of what is called Japan's fundamental reinforcement of defense capabilities and so on. Now, that, of course, doesn't necessarily mean that Japan underestimates the importance of Indo-Pacific. And actually, this new document clearly says that it aims at enabling Japan to create a new balance in Indo-Pacific. And what does it mean, new balance, creating a new balance in the Pacific? Now, in my understanding, that means that, how to fill the gap between China and regional powers in terms of material capabilities. Now, 2 decades ago, China's military expenditure was only 40.3% of the total expenditure of Asia-Pacific countries. But today, that is, nearly half, 46.1%. Sharing almost half of regional military expenditure, excluding the United States. And that makes regional countries increasingly vulnerable against China's coercive behavior over maritime and territorial interests and so on. So how to enhance regional partners' capabilities as well as collectively responding to Chinese coercive behavior. And that's actually getting more and more important to maintain the status quo, the rules-based order in the region. Now, in that respect, I think Australia is probably the most valuable partner for Japan in the Pacific. Because like Japan, Australia has been undertaking the largest ever defense build-up since the end of the World War II. It has already achieved what's called 2% GDP target of the defense expenditure, and even try to increase more. I think it's going to be more or less 3% in the foreseeable future. It has already committed to acquire some long-range missiles or hypersonic weapons or UAVs, mines, etc., etc. And the current government, Al-Waziri government, is going to have a new defense strategic update, which is a really important strategic document. And that document is set to stress the what is called the lethality of the weapons of Australian Defense Forces, and of course here come the AUKUS things, and I think there are so many uncertainties, especially about the domestic production of nuclear submarines in Australia. But nevertheless, if this big initiative is realized, I think it's going to be a significant impact on the regional balance of power. And even more, it's going to enhance actually U.S. access to Indo-Pacific region by establishing some port for the maintenance and repairing the U.S. nuclear submarines and so on. So I think it's gonna have a clear, very important, factors to alter the balance of power in the region, and that actually makes Australia more attractive partner for Japan's new national security strategy. Excuse me, and that's why Japan actually has tried to enhance defense cooperation with Australia. Actually, Japan-Australia Defense Cooperation started from some non-traditional security cooperation, but now getting more and more traditionally focused and high-end, cooperation centered on Japan defense cooperation. And the new joint security declaration, which was announced last year, clearly state that Japan and Australia are going to not only consult but jointly respond to regional some contingencies, and of course Japan concluded RAA reciprocal access agreement that will support that kind of a high-end cooperation between two partners by enhancing interoperability between the SDF and the Australian military. And well, it's actually some people question whether Japan and Australia would directly engage in actual contingencies. That kind of case would be quite rare, according to those opinions. But even if they do not directly actually cooperate in actual contingency, I think it's very important to enhance their interoperability to understand each other regarding what kind of responses they would have in case of actual contingencies, and how to coordinate their joint response and so on. So that's going to be very important. And of course, Australia is Japan's most important partner to enhance free, open, rules-based, and inclusive regional order, free and open in the Pacific. And I think that kind of role is also very, very, getting more and more important as some revisionist countries try to challenge against the existing rules-based order. Now, here again, it's really essential to support some regional countries, including Southeast Asia and the Pacific Island countries, where Chinese political economy and even military influence has continued to grow. And actually, that bilateral initiatives include the commitment to work with established Pacific architecture for regional engagement, in particular, the Pacific Island Forum, for example, or to support 2015 strategy for the Blue Pacific continent and so on. And again, cooperation with other partners, even extra-regional partners like UK, France, and Germany, for some kind of new initiative, such as a partnership in the Blue Pacific, and AP4 or whatever, those new unilateral frameworks are going to be more and more important to enhance regional resiliency and also connectivity and so on. So I think that's pretty much all for my presentation, but I'd like to finally mention about some challenges, key challenges ahead, Japan-Australia security cooperation. And in my opinion, that mostly comes from the domestic, factors. especially Japan's slow decision-making style or legal constraints and weak defense industry. And these are really important factors to become a kind of obstacles for closer Japan-Australia security cooperation. For example, RAA was not even discussed in the Japanese diet yet, and it should be ratified pretty much soon. And of course, Australia has also similar issues, especially in its defense industry. It's very, very actually weak, and they have a kind of shortage of labor forces, and manufacturing is very, very weak. And some people say that they should establish a kind of ecosystem between industry, the government, academics, but we are not quite sure if they can have that kind of ecosystem in Australia. So I think our strategy and aims are very, very much clear. The question is how to implement those strategy and objectives. And to do so, we have to resolve these domestic factors, which is vital and maybe easiest way to strengthen the Japan-Australia cooperation. I think I should stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Satake-san. So last but not least, Jimbo-san. So we've heard the perspective from all these different regions that Japan has a partnership with. And how does that sit in overall Japan's strategic outlook and kind of anchoring those relationship with the U.S.-Japan alliance?
Well, thank you very much, Yuki-san, for inviting me here, and also for including me as one of the contributor to your volumes. It was a pleasant experience, and also learn a lot from other writers, and including those fine colleagues that you see on the screen. And my submission of the article is exactly about what the national security strategy and the national defense strategy as a Japan's kind of endeavor to break through some of the historical kind of limits that we face, including those the budgetary issues, and also procurements of some of the specific kind of weapon systems like long-range strike capabilities. But I leave it to there. For if any viewers have any questions, I'll be happy to respond. But today, I try to define my role as a discussant to three excellent presentations that we heard, and try to raise some of those agenda to provoke some discussion in a due course. First of all, on India, as Dr. Kurita mentioned, I fully concur that 2022 was quite a sensitive, difficult year to readjust ourselves in how we can deal with India. Because as Kurita-san mentioned, that there has been 2 decades of evolution in our relationship with India. Basically, it's a linear moving forward. Of course, there's a bumpy steps were there, but we had lots of like a defense relationship, strategic partnership agreements, evolution of military to military relationship, some negotiation in dealing with the defense industry, and lots of interfaces, including those businesses and economy as well. And formation of the Quad was also the great story that, especially after having lots of turmoil, crush with China, there has been the, upheaval of the Indians' public awareness about how they can counter China, especially with border issues, and also in dealing with, surmounting the Chinese kind of investment behavior and the trade volumes. There has been the, growing tensions and awareness that India needs to maintain its strategic autonomy out of those Chinese to be hijacked by Chinese engagement. So that was a great opportunity for getting India into our Quad streamline, and then to see China as a more like a joint kind of I think destination that we can really align our strategy together. But Ukraine crisis, Russian invasion in Ukraine, but we are all aware that India was in the awkward position that they cannot really take a side very clearly upon how they try to position themselves in the schemes. And we expected as a responsible player in South Asia, and India is growing and becoming major power in the region. And we wish that India could play more like a principled approach, especially towards those invasions. It's a clear violation of the UN Charter. And if India cannot take a stance on those issues, how can we really become the like-minded states who can really share those strategy together? But India came up with lots of argument last year. We heard that India has a historical relationship with Russia, and 60-70% of the weaponry and procurements are from Russia. They buy oil. They even increase the quota of the imports from Russia. And whenever we try to question that India's stance, that India returned to us by saying that criticizing our double standards. What about Syria? What about Afghanistan? It's kind of, and then they came up with new identification that they are now leading the global South, and I think that was a very difficult time to redefine the role of India in the alliance context. And if we got together in April, and the Quad summit meetings, 2 months after the invasion, and I think that if United States, Japan, and Australia was stubborn enough that after those kind of significant invasion, if you do not take the side on this, we cannot really maintain such kind of coalition, because it's a very significant historical moment. But after all, after several weeks, we have found out it's a huge amounts of energy about the cohesion of the Europe, right? And even that many of those swing states or identifiably more like neutral states have also become more cohesive members of Europe and NATO, like what the Scandinavian country have responded, and Germany, double the size of the budgets, and all things happen. But after all that, if you count the number of how many countries who are joining the sanction, that's only 37, 38 countries. It doesn't really include many of those so-called global South country that involves India and many of Southeast Asia. So and if that is the reality, I think something that we have tried to pursue is to be ourselves very patient, because this is the reality of what's been happening. Why don't we try to redefine Quad as a more like a very patient evolutionary processes? So if you find that what happened in last year, April joint statement, there are lots of agreement, but it's almost all like a METI agenda, including like economic cooperation, energy, supply chain resiliency, medical cooperation, and those sort of things. And again, what about Malabar? What about naval cooperation? What about contingency planning? And I think we are a little bit far from that kind of things, especially since 2022. But I think that was where we are at now. You don't have to be too much disillusioned by this, because India, we found India's I think kind of strategic positioning in many areas. And I think if you go to India, you can immediately find out that the Quad is a part of their strategy. They have a more like a multifaceted kind of engagements with Russia, BRICS, South Asia, and Middle East, and beyond. And I think we really need to find out that where India is positioned in our context. So this is some kind of a very careful strategic adjustment that we made in 2022, and I think continues to be the case 23, but more on the G7, G20 connections are now on the diplomatic agenda. And as for the Quad, I think I also concur with Kurita-san. We are far away, even though that we have a Quad, and we have a summit, we have a Malabar, we have a more interoperability among our militaries, but we are still far away against the backdrop that the China claims that this is an Asian version of NATO, and I think that China is overestimating what the Quad is all about. And I think at the Quad, essence of the Quad lies in the individual bilateral relationship within the Quad. So it is more important that we share the standards, we share the kind of definition of what the safety of sea lines of communication might look like, and then what kind of measures that will be taken in the context of the bilateral relationship within the Quad. And I think this is something that really need to be, I think, stressed. On Southeast Asia, I do have a couple of things to say. Koga-san mentions, I think very accurately, that there has been less attention has been paid on the importance of formally, I think, embraced notion of the ASEAN centrality, and also ASEAN, sitting on the driving seat of the regional evolution. Because in past years, what we have, found out is the kind of evolution of the new alignments, including the AUKUS that Satake-san has mentioned, and the role of Quad maybe overtaking the kind of agenda-setting role that ASEAN has traditionally played for long years. And one of the reasons is that I think there has been a growing mismatch between what is happening as a reality, geostrategic reality in the region versus what the ASEAN adjusting themselves institutionally, legally, and also as a taking action towards them. So I think this has been the problem because whenever we say the same Indo-Pacific, but what kind of Indo-Pacific you're talking about? And I think that there has been a more competitive elements in the Indo-Pacific kind of engagement that Japanese government, especially since 2021-22, there's lots of supply chain resiliency measures, partial selective decoupling, tech competitions, and all things are now involved in the so-called free and open Indo-Pacific. And in my scholarly approaches, a Japanese concept of the FOIP is no longer FOIP. Because we are more talking about the competitive elements in the Indo-Pacific region, while ASEAN has been quite, I think, I would say, reluctant in upgrading its, AOIP concept since 2019. I have been hearing a rumor that the Indonesian government is now trying to update the AOIP concept, and then I hope that this could be kind of strategic adjustments in a way that where we are trying to stand in the same the same terminology of the Indo-Pacific can really streamline the process of our regional engagement together. And eventually, I think I found a chat box that some of the viewers would wish to explore the issue of Philippines, and I would like to mention a few. First of all, we are very, from policy-wise, we are very, I think, fortunate to see that there has been a normalization process taking place between the United States and the Philippines. Since Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement has signed in 2014, Philippines has agreed to offer like 5 local, facilities and bases for the location for the United States frequent like a rotational access point, and there has to be have more investments, in the infrastructure developments and supporting facilities and so on. But it's been stalled for so many years under the Duterte administration. But now that the new Marcos administration comes in, that I think that we are rolling down on the right track. And with the Secretary Austin's recent visit, that the Philippines has agreed to add 4 more additional bases on this, and that is a good news for the United States. Kind of additional access points, in both on the regular, like a peaceful situation, but during the contingency, it depends on how much the Philippines might agree, but it will create the strategic depth for the United States operation whenever they need to disperse those operation and the need a base for the airports, ports, and many kind of supporting facility, logistic bases, and Philippines might play a very important strategic role for the U.S. engagement in the region. Now, with the Japan have also started. Interestingly, they started at the end of the Duterte administration because Defense Minister Lorenzana and a couple of Malacanang strategists were wise enough in institutionalize those kind of bilateral bipartisan processes, but they have identified the AXA and RAA, acquisition and cross-service agreement and the reciprocal access agreement. I memorized well, but those kind of two measures have been on the table, and I think AXA goes first, and then RAA will follow. But if that kind of agreement could be made between Japanese government and the Philippines, it will create the condition that the SDF may have a more access to Philippines, starting probably from the logistic kind of prepositionings, and more opportunity for joint exercises starting from the HADR and so on. But probably that the Japanese self-defense force will be rotationally stationing somewhere in Palawan or any and Luzon, and they can be a part of those regular kind of ISR types of the mission, including South China Sea. So this is the very important implication of what's been happening when we try to see the kind of evolution of how Philippines is, situated in this context. And eventually on Australia, I think Satake-san has outlined quite eloquently about what happened in past few years, which is a very significant role that Australia has been playing. And I think Australia has made a couple of strategic choices, which surprised me a lot. One is the AUKUS, especially on the procurement of the nuclear propellant submarine. I think creates the Australia role as a, I think, global player, especially in the underwater warfare. And with kind of extension of the coverage that the Australia's naval operation might play in the South Pacific, South China Sea, and even towards Northeast Asia, that will give us lots of impetus for the underwater anti-submarine operation together with the United States and Japan, and maybe with the UK. And that's good news for all of us, except adversaries. And as for the RIA, and Satake-san has already mentioned that there has been the upgrading kind of relationship between Japan and Australia, and especially something operationally most important is our agreement upon asset protection measures. So whenever we sail together, we are probably exercising I don't know how legally the Japanese government tried to see on those asset protection measures, but if Australia is attacked and if we sail together, that we are able to counter strike them. So this is it creates a very, I think, the best potential for Japan, Australia, together with the United States in the space of the joint operation, which go beyond the U.S.-Japan alliance. So these are, I think, quite important strategic implications that I would like to mention. So I'd like to stop here.
Thank you so much for touching upon just about, if not only everyone's comment, initial remark, but also taking a first stab at the very first question that we got, which did ask about the Japan's evolving relationship with the Philippines and Australia. So since I already have that and you already mentioned that, maybe I'd like to invite Satake-san and Koga-san to see if either of you have anything to add to what Jimbo-san said.
Oh, yes. No, I think Professor Jimbo has covered almost all
issues. So I don't have pretty much, to add. But regarding the trilateral cooperation, Japan, Philippines, and the US, I totally agree with what Professor Jimbo mentioned, and it's very, very important for the creating some strategic depth and also US more dispersed regional presence in the region. And the question is how to support the US military activities by regional allies and partnership. And then from that perspective, I think it's quite significant initiative because Australia already has some kind of a visiting force agreement with the Philippine government. And Japan is going to have the similar one. I think Japan is trying to simulate Australia's already established arrangement. And that could also help Japan and Australia jointly support US military actions and the US military stationing, some port of the Philippines. And I'm not sure which port, maybe Subic or somewhere, will become the US, main port under the EDCA. But and I heard that there are still some local resistance against those initiatives. But nevertheless, if that realized, that's going to be quite important. I just found some question about AUKUS, Japan's possibility of Japan's joining the AUKUS. To be honest, I don't think that would happen at least in the foreseeable future. And there are several reasons, but one is that, what is AUKUS? What is AUKUS? And that is actually integration of domestic defense industries between three countries. I think the essence of AUKUS is the integration of defense industries between three countries. And I can hardly imagine that Japan's defense industry would jump into that kind of already established framework, integration of supply chain, integration of production lines and so on. That's really difficult, at least for now, for Japan's defense industry. But and plus, we have some issues of security clearance, and Australia is especially pretty much sensitive about that issues, and that's why some Australian people are a bit negative about having newcomers for this framework by Anglo-Saxon or Five Eyes countries and so on. Nevertheless, I don't exclude the possibility, in the foreseeable future, and there are many overlaps actually in terms of capabilities, and like hypersonic is a good example, for example. So I think Japan can cooperate with AUKUS in some areas such as hypersonic or underwater, activities and so on. But that is different from Japan joining AUKUS itself. So I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Satake-san, for that additional thought. Koga-san, do you have anything on the Philippines in addition to Jimbo-san said?
Yes. So just quickly, I think the Jimbo-san pretty much covered everything. So I don't have any much to add. But the one thing I had actually to kind of emphasize is that the trilateral cooperation is now actually get the momentum between the Japan, ASEAN, Japan, the Philippines, and then the United States. During the Duterte era, Japan actually had the strong relationship with the Philippines, but again, United States wasn't. And then that was the kind of the downsides of the trilateral cooperation. But now, because the Marcos has kind of shared the similar the strategic perspective, and also the similar kind of the threat perception in the East Asia. So I guess this is a time when we could actually push forward those kind of trilateral cooperation. But at the same time, this is good for bilateral and also trilateral the strategy. But then when we look at the region as a region, then that actually creates maybe some division. Hopefully not, but then division in the Southeast Asia, because some of the countries are more inclined to align with the United States also. And then I'm not really sure what are the other countries like the Indonesia or Malaysia actually think about it. I mean, so this is a kind of ongoing discussion, and hopefully it could actually everything goes well. But let's see how it goes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question actually is probably open to all of you. What is Japan's new strategy to the global south, given India and ASEAN kind of distancing themselves from Japan's goals. Maybe I'll start with you, Kurita-san, and then invite others for additional comments.
Thank you, Tatsumi-san, and thank you for raising this question. Actually, yeah, as Jim Sensei said, the 2022 was the year that Japan and also our partner, I mean, United States and Australia realized that how difficult to, attract support from the global South countries, and how different their understanding with this kind of existing international order from our understanding. So, in my understanding, Prime Minister Kishida's speech in Delhi indicated that we have to understand their, value or something like that, and we should not impose our value to them. So we have to have a dialogue. Yeah, I think maybe this is one of the very important points for us to engage these global South countries, and related to that point, in my understanding, maybe how to deal with these global South countries, including India, what is important is that, we should not emphasize too much the value aspect of our foreign policy. Many people now say that this now ongoing US-China strategic competition is mainly about, kind of democracy versus autocracy. So, this kind of value-based competition framework, it is described in such a way. But in my understanding, we should not, emphasize too much this kind of aspect, because Western understanding of democracy is sometimes a little bit makes these countries uneasy, not only India, but also including other global South countries. So we should not emphasize this too much, but we should focus on much more on, proposing some kind of very attractive vision. I'm not sure it is attractive or not, but at least China is now proposing their own vision, right? Kind of, I'm not sure, common destiny. Sorry, I forget the exact expression, but the common destiny or Chinese dream or such kind of things. But we have to propose kind of alternative vision. Of course, this is an extension of the currently existing international order, but we should make this existing order much more attractive and propose in such a manner. And in doing that, we should not emphasize value aspects too much. This is my thought.
May I add on that?
Sure.
I've been contemplating on what is really global South. That's a question for all of us. I mean, it is the terminology that it's been often been cited by scholars, journalists, and even by the policy makers. But I'm afraid that they haven't really come up with the same terminologies and definitions over this. And so let me have my own take on this. Why we call global South is because it's different from the previous South, which is stagnant, separated, contrasting with the North, which is rich, and the South, which it hasn't really had a potential to grow because of the structural kind of Marxist type of the international relations understanding. But South is now growing, and I think in terms of the trends of the distribution of power, obviously that there will be enormous amounts of the influence that will gain in the international politics. So that's the kind of why they call global, because it's on the emergence. And the second, although they are growing, they're not simply accommodating the West. So they are not G something. I mean, by its own terms, to accommodate with the G7 countries, but it has its own interest dynamics within it. And the global South is 100-something countries, and they have to be subcategorized in so many ways. But at least that they are not simply accommodating to the existing G7 norms. And then thirdly, I think somewhat try to find the commonality. They seems to be that they do not want to sacrifice their interest by only to subordinate themselves into the so-called international order or rule-based things. So it's a kind of very difficult, as I think Professor Rosman just raised, that Japan's approach and India's approach may be different, and I somewhat agree, because Japan tried to be sympathetic with those difficult nature of the global south, but from shouldering the G7 agenda, right? G7 is here, and we have to deal with the global south. This is probably Japan's approach in the Hiroshima, but India tried to shoulder global south to look at G7. So it's a completely different kind of direction, even though we are trying to deal and understand the difficulties of the global south. So I don't really know the answer, but we're probably, there will be overlapping kind of things that we can accommodate together with Japan and India in leading to difficult multilateral framework that we have faced this year. But I do agree with some of those viewers' question that there are some kind of the directional differences that Japan and India may have.
Thank you, Jinbo-san. I think Koga-san may have additional thoughts on this.
Sorry, just about the, sorry, thank you so much. Just quickly about the global south. I think what the Kurita-san and Jinbo-san said, right. I think the other important thing is that the first of all, I think we should not overemphasize the value, and so this is because probably they are not sure that the countries in so-called the global south were not sure how they could actually incorporate those values in their social system, and then without actually understanding their kind of social background or their social fabric, then probably they may not actually accommodate what the also G7 says, and so I think the important thing is that first we need to understand what their condition is, and then if we just kind of impose the standards also on the basis of our values also, then probably that is not going to apply. I think they are just refusing because they think their culture and the social background is going to change by imposition. Secondly, the global south, you be correct, but then the definition of south, global south is so vague, and then also global south is not unified at all. I think what they actually they were bounded together is that they probably kind of be skeptical about what the great powers are doing, and then they were actually concerned about those new standards or everything the new kind of economic initiative that might be encroaching their own kind of their national interest also. So I believe that that we need to actually deconstruct the concept of the global south. How each actual region see those standards and all. Because if you look at the ASEAN, some of the countries are pretty much they agreed with what the G7 said. On the other hand, there are some countries which were actually really skeptical about those kind of standards, and then they were not really hesitant to take those kind of standards into their economic and social system. So my point is we need to be really careful about when we talk about the global south, because they are not the monolithic.
Thank you, Koga-san, for your thought. Jinbo-san, actually, Satake-san already tackled part of this viewer's question, but any thoughts on a possibility of a Republic of Korea joining the Quad? So
Sure.
Satake-san tackled the AUKUS part of the question, but this South Korea versus Quad question.
Sure. First of all, I think almost all the viewers have recognized that the recent rapprochement between Korea and Japan, and with President Yoon's visit to Tokyo, we have come up with lots of, I think, political agreement between two sides, overcoming the long-standing fiasco over the issue that we face. But with the Korea's courageous strategic decision made by the Yoon government, it has created the condition for both of us to move many important agenda forward, including Japan, Korea defense corporations. And once that missing link or the missing kind of opportunity in the leg of trilateral cooperation, that will also trigger, I think, Japan, US, Korea defense security cooperation in many regards. So existing collaboration that involves the like GSOMIA intelligence cooperation, it has survived in past years, but it has not been activated as much as what we expect to do so. But since North Korea has been very active, that help us to rationalize the importance of the defense intelligence cooperation more deeply. And that will also trigger the Korean side to deepen the defense cooperation with the United States that involves the nuclear component. And sometimes that Korean conservative argument even go further, whether Korea should also be thinking step forward on the existence of the nuclear weapon on the soil of Korea in various forms. But I don't think that Korean government is now going to the trajectory on that field, but at least that the nuclear posture and the employment schemes needs to be discussed on the table of the extended deterrence dialogue in the US-Korea context. And many of the reports in the media have said that Japan is interested in joining that scheme, connecting those extended deterrence dialogue into that trilateral framework. And this is something that potentially might evolve in coming months if that, the scheme could be negotiated well. But in terms of the Korea joining AUKUS, well, I think that that is not really the case. But Korea is interested in, I think, upgrading their submarine programs that involves the nuclear propellant. I don't know, that could be the AUKUS-based cooperation or South Korea's its own kind of engagement towards it. But I think primarily South Korea's interest on the defense domain is to create the better shape in the trilateral cooperation. But finally, Yoon administration's another achievement was the release of their own Indo-Pacific strategy. So definitely that Korea is go beyond the Korean Peninsula first, concern towards a more like a region-wide cooperation. And so I think that will also create lots of potential to match up with many of those Indo-Pacific strategies that major players are trying to, plug and play on this. So these are my general answer to this question, and specifically, I don't really see that the potential of South Korea joining into those framework.
Thank you. I think this may be another question that are probably very much in Kurita-san's lane, is this question about the Quad and India. Quad has shifted to economic security side, which is exactly what India seemed to be aiming at. But Indian Navy and Air Force is more inclined to operating with US and like-minded countries than ever. Would it be possible to contemplate division of labor between Quad on one hand and a Malabar and other US or Australian-led multilateral exercises?
actually, this question is from my NEET's
Yes,
colleague.
Izuyama-san, yeah, Izuyama sensei.
And maybe she know Japan-India cooperation much better than me. But actually, I'm a little bit not sure about what does she mean, because Quad is a kind of cooperation framework, and Quad itself is not a kind of framework of exercise. So I'm not so much sure about the division of labor between Quad and Marble and other exercises, but maybe I think that yes, we have to think about what we do in this framework and what we do in this framework and in this framework.
I think that's what exactly I think she seemed to be getting at. I think what she's question, maybe she is asking whether it is possible to kind of compartmentalize the issue box that India, in India's maybe like a cooperation with India is more in kind of compartmentalized into this multilateral exercises and create the more of a habit of cooperation, whereas Quad is serves different purpose. In this case, economic security, at least for the time being, at least.
Yes, I think it may be a kind of wise strategy to compartmentalize. So we do these kind of things because it is possible only in this framework, and other framework we do this kind of compartmentalization is a very good strategy for the time being, because engaging India in every aspect is still very difficult for us. I think so.
Thank you. Next one is, I think this is open also for everybody. How does the panel view China's strategic activities toward North and South Korea as factoring into Japan's national security strategy? Maybe I'll start with you, Jimbo-san, on this, and then I'll definitely invite others to chime in as well.
This is quite a difficult question. You really need to kind of decipher this puzzle. I guess that what we have identified as the sets of the risks that we face in Asia, we have identified three: China as the greatest strategic challenge, North Korea as an imminent, threat, and Russia is, the strategic concern, and basically what they say as a package, that if they try to align together, that's going to be like a doubling down, force multiplier types of the threat that that will impose a cost so much upon it. So if Russia try to harass our operation in the north, and then if something else happen in the southwest, that's going to cost a lot to us. And then same thing happened between China and North Korea. Now, I don't really see the huge evidence that they can really align at the tactical level, that there are missile activities and operational in the Korean Peninsula could directly linked with what China does over Taiwan, South China Sea, or whatever. But if those kind of alignments evolves, I don't see the kind of signs of evolving, but evolves, that could potentially be a huge strategic benefits for China, and I don't know for North Korea. But that's if the lots of missiles are flying, and we do have to have intercepting operations in the Sea of Japan, and then if something else happen in Southwest, definitely that will consume lots of resources that we simultaneously have to deal with it. So this could be something that we also have to look at. I don't really know. I cannot really answer about the China-South Korea relationship, but might matter to Japan. But especially by having a conservative Yoon government at place, I think China's concern is more on South Korea's current administration, because they are leaning very much vividly towards United States and Japan. So I think if that is the case, you don't really see that any kinds of margin that South Korea and China can collaborate something against United States and Japan.
Thank you. Does any of you and any other panelists have anything to add? If you do, Koga-san, great.
Yeah.
I actually do have a tack-on question from Izuyama Sensei. Is also, as you reply to this question, if you can also reply to her question, which is, what is the definition of status quo among major ASEAN countries? India's sense of status quo vis-a-vis China's action looks very vague from Japanese eyes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. So the just one addition. I mean on the China the South Korea relations. I think the South Korea had been actually the kind of hesitant about the what to do with the its ally United States and China as before the I think the 2016. I think that it was 2016 when the third incident actually happened. The missile, launcher of the missile was actually deployed in the South Korea. And then at that time, the China was actually imposing the economic sanctions and also the social sanctions on the South Korea. And then this actually changed the perception in South Korea. But at the same time, the South Korea tried to diversify its strategy in order to align with the not necessarily Japan, but with the other countries like the Southeast Asian countries for its economic growth and so on and so forth. So I guess the China's strategic activities created the important atmosphere or momentum in which the Japan can actually have the possibility to cooperate with the South Korea, and particularly today's the government is trying to improve its relation with the Japan a lot. So maybe like the Japan is now thinking about institutionalizing their cooperation with the South Korea, so that even if there's a domestic kind of political change, that might not be favorable for the bilateral relations, they could actually continue cooperation. So I think like that's how the Japan would actually think about it. But this is just kind of my guess. So that's that. And for the status quo for the major ASEAN the countries, I think it's really hard. Probably like the ASEAN countries are now like thinking they are also perceiving the change in the status quo, and then it cannot actually reverse the strategic dynamics, so that favorably the ASEAN country wants to see the status quo where the great powers have the kind of stable strategic relations, so that there's no kind of like the strong the arms race or the dilemma between the major powers in the Southeast Asia and beyond. But they are actually increasingly seeing that this is actually changing. So even though like major ASEAN countries prefer the status quo, but I think like they know that they are changing and that they cannot actually sustain this they maintain the status quo in their favor.
Thank you, Koga-san. So this probably will be the last question, and this will be open to all of you. Question for the panelist: does Self-Defense Force has a capacity and capability to support the Defense Cooperation Declaration, bilateral relations, etc., that government of Japan has entered with ASEAN, India, Australia to come to the defense militarily? I'm not entirely sure not entirely clear on this, but I think I would just spin it in a way that in your respective area, Australia, India, and ASEAN, obviously Japan already has a certain degree of a security partnership and a relationship. But what are the what's the way forward in that, in terms of capacity, whether that may be capacity building, institutionalizing further the relationship, and so forth?
Maybe could I start from?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that Japan definitely have that kind of capacity as well as a will to commit, in terms of defense engagement, capacity buildings and defense equipment cooperation. So on that new national security strategy actually set some new initiatives that Japan can not only provide the ODA, but also, provide some defense equipment by not using ODA scheme or something like that, and that will make it easier for Japan to have more defense equipment with cooperation with regional partners. And regarding Australia, Japan has already committed to some rotational deployment of the F-35 to the northern part of Australia, so that we can have more military exercise with Australia and US military forces and other regional countries as well. That initiative is a kind of a good example. And also in terms of South Pacific, Japan has already decided to expand its cooperation, not only with a country that has a military department like Fiji, Tonga, and PNG, but also with other countries that even that doesn't have military capabilities, military department and so on. So I think that shows how Japan is pretty much enthusiastic about the greater defense engagement with the regional partners. And what's really important is not only to provide some hardware like defense equipment, but also how to cooperate with more soft cooperation, including the people-to-people exchange. I think we should send more people to Southeast Asia and South Pacific, for example, just like Australia does, or military embedment, or embedment is impossible, but sending liaison officers or defense attaches, or and sending even the retired SD officials for the maintenance and repairment of those equipment provided by the SDF and so on. So those kind of comprehensive, engagement should be enhanced more in the foreseeable future. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe next I might go to Koga-san, and then Kurita-san, and then I'll finally come to Jimbo-san for his last words.
Thank you. Just very quickly, I think the JSDF or Japan has the political will to cooperate with the ASEAN member states militarily, and then they actually Japan created the so-called vision, the Vientiane vision, that is to strengthen the Japan-ASEAN defense ties, and then they actually try to kind of facilitate many cooperative programs, including the defense exercise and also the capacity building programs for the HADR or like the SAR, the search and rescue. And then they actually facilitate such program as the Shipwriter program. They invite some of the ASEAN the defense staff to the Japan's the defense ship to the show, and then facilitate the information sharing. So I guess that's the really important kind of the point that Japan emphasized with the ASEAN. At the same time, after the COVID-19, this kind of the program was a little bit kind of like slowed down. So, but still, I think for the capacity building also, they are engaging with the Southeast Asian countries bilaterally. So I think in the future, they would actually come back to this kind of vision, the vision, and then they facilitate more kind of the multilateral cooperation in terms of defense.
Thank you. Kurita-san, last word from you.
So regarding Japan's political will and the capability to engage in some kind of defense military cooperation with India, I think, as I already mentioned, we don't have any kind of collective defense commitment with India, but under that level, we have been engaging in many kind of defense or military kind of cooperations. And especially promising is, I think that so defense equipment or technology corporations, such as now export of the kind of antennas for destroyers is under consideration. And also, as I mentioned, kind of technology cooperation in the defense field is also very much promising. And also, kind of cybersecurity area is pretty much good areas for enhancing cooperation. And regarding, as Tatsumi said, kind of capacity building beyond India, maybe Japan and India can jointly engage some kind of capacity building in security field to regional countries in South Asia. I mean, so such as Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, regarding these countries, maybe Japan and India can do something to enhance their capability in the field of maritime security. And this kind of cooperation is becoming increasingly important as China is increasingly stepping up its engagement with these countries. So I think these kind of areas are very good areas for us to step up our cooperation. Yeah, I think so.
Thank you. And last but not least, Jimbo-san, real quickly.
Thank you. Like to conclude my remark by mentioning about what is lacking in our strategy. And I think Sadake-san has mentioned at the outset that he did a word counting on the country and how less the strategy talk about the region. And definitely what is lacking is a regional strategy. And I think it less than the previous documents. And the backside of this is that how much we have emphasized the role played by our own defense and how much we have to put in resource and energy, political will towards how to defend ourselves. And that's really, commended in a way that how to demonstrate our capability to play greater role in our defense. That's, I think, a major purpose of this strategy. But I would like to leave my comments that there are a couple of wishful thinking left behind in this strategy. First of all, one wishful thinking, although we have decided to double the size of the defense budgets and a lot of like a procurements plan, but we don't know how much we are relevant in exercising our deterrence strategy vis-a-vis bigger enemies. I mean, we said that extension of the standoff missile capability and including counter-strike capability will create the kind of our own strategic depth in maneuverability of engaging the enemy far, and that might involve in a major crisis scenarios like in Taiwan Strait. That is great. I mean, how much we can really make a difference on this, it has to be taken into account as a new aspects of what we are trying to get at. But how much we are able to, deter the actual, conflict scenario is something to be assessed. And secondly, we said that if deterrence failed, the document says that we gonna maintain the superiority by cross-domain warfare asymmetrically. What do we mean by this? And China is also prepared for the cross-domain operations, and so is the United States. But how our cross-domain operation can maintain the superiority is something that you cannot really verify it. And then we will sustain our defense like what the Ukraine did on Russia. But our sustainability, how much is enough, and that is something that lots of things need to be discovered. And then something I'm also would like to mention lastly was that it document says if our deterrence capability will be performed, there will be a contribution to the regional deterrence capability. That's exactly what the deterrence said. But I would like to question how, because there are so many different kind of prospects of the deterrence in South Pacific, South China Sea, Malacca Straits, and Indian Ocean. It's all kind of different mechanism. Why we do have a couple of capabilities will, contribute to the deterrence in the region as a whole. And I think this is a lack of, intellectual approach on this subject, which we really need to fill. And I don't think that the strategy is a perfect one and needs to be improved. And that I think requires us to explore lots of ideas for the future.
So with that, sounds like that'll keep all of us, including panelists and myself, busy for the foreseeable future. And with that, thank you so much. Well, thank you everyone for joining me so late in Tokyo time. And thank you everyone for plowing through with us for the last 90 minutes. This concludes the final part 3 of this webinar series on Japan's new national security strategy. And for those of you who are chiming in from Asia, please do have a good rest of the Friday night. And for those of us who are tuning in from